In Bolivia, the referendum campaign there comes to an end. Plus, in Colombia, a massive sex and prostitution ring is shaking the entire country. Thanks for joining us for teleSur's English. I'm Coddy Weddle, and this is From the South. To begin today, that campaign in Bolivia has ended ahead of Sunday's referendum to modify presidential term limits. Now, some opposing the change have launched personal attacks against the president there, Evo Morales, in the media. With the latest now on the campaign, we turn to our correspondent there, Dimitri O'Donnell in Bolivia.
Up to 20,000 passionate Yes supporters gathered in La Paz for their final rally of the campaign. They came in their thousands to support President Evo Morales, who issued a final call for voters to back constitutional reform. Supporters were told that a yes vote would ensure the future stability of Bolivia and continued economic growth. Young voters like 25-year-old Juan agrees.
I'm voting yes because I believe in this process of change, and I have seen prosperity in Bolivia.
When Evo Morales entered government, I was in the countryside and I saw on TV how the campesinos said we are in power, and they were so happy.
The people of Bolivia, the peasant rural jewelers from the 20 provinces, we're going to vote yes.
The No campaign is also holding rallies and final marches across the country. Supporters say they're confident the momentum is with them and that rural voters are looking for change.
After 10 years of the government of President Evo Morales, after we have had an economic bonanza here in Bolivia, thanks to the growth of the hydrocarbons, nothing has been done for the rural voters. On the contrary, Bolivia is suffering a catastrophic invasion of Peruvian, Chilean, and Argentinian products.
6.5 million Bolivians will vote in Sunday's referendum. They're being asked whether they want to change the constitution and abolish two-term presidential limits. As this campaign draws to a close, both sides are hoping they've done enough to convince voters to side with them. But with an estimated 18% of voters still undecided, it could be a very close call on Sunday. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSur's, La Paz.
Also in Bolivia, the United States has finally accepted the country's request to extradite former President Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada. Now, he was charged with genocide there. Sanchez de Lozada and 15 of his ministers were charged with genocide by the Bolivian Supreme Court in 2007. But U.S. authorities granted political asylum to the former head of state. Sanchez de Lozada ordered the violent repression of protesters in 2003 when his government privatized gas and water. The violence left 67 killed and 400 injured. And for the latest now on that case, we turn to our correspondent there in Bolivia once again, Dimitri O'Donnell. Dimitri, what else can you tell us about this case? What impact will his extradition have, and what's the importance of that trial there in Bolivia?
Well, Cody, as you mentioned in your introduction, this is a very significant development for Bolivia because Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada was president in Bolivia from 2002 to 2003, a very short period, but he fled to the United States in 2003 after his role in the so-called gas wars, in which more than 60 people were killed in El Alto protesting legitimately. Now, over the years, Evo Morales, one of his first diplomatic requests when he was elected back in 2006, was to the United States asking for the extradition of Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada. Now, they denied that request. And as a result, they were accused of sheltering Lozada for all of these years. Now, 9 years later, they formally accepted the request and said they will begin these extradition proceedings. But the lawyers have warned the victims' families that this is just the beginning. It's a very early stage in the proceedings, and that this could, in fact, last some years to come. Now, in relation to how significant it is here in Bolivia in terms of this incident, it's still very much remembered. Every October in El Alto, on the anniversary of this incident, they march in their thousands to remember the victims. They say that the family members were legitimately protesting and that the military turned on them indiscriminately and without warning and killed up to more than 60 people. They say they cannot forget this incident, they will never forget this incident, and they want justice for their family members, Cody.
We will count on you, Dimitri, to keep us updated as that case progresses there as he is returned to the country. Dimitri O'Donnell, thanks so much. And we turn to Colombia now, where another investigation and scandal there. President Juan Manuel Santos the police chief there, Rodolfo Palomino, he has finally stepped aside there. Now, due to more charges against him, related to mounting evidence of a prostitution ring being ran by the National Police Force. Deputy Interior Minister and former Senator Carlos Ferro also resigned after a new video emerged in which he is seen in his car driving with one of the policemen to a motel. The prosecution has revealed that high-level politicians are also involved in the scandal and had solicited the services of the prostitution ring. Also in Colombia, President Juan Manuel Santos has announced that amnesty will not be granted for soldiers after a final peace agreement is reached in Havana, Cuba. The Colombian military has been singled out in several human rights reports for committing extrajudicial executions and torture. Now, although the peace process has yet to reach a final deal, the victims of the conflict are raising particular concerns regarding the ongoing problem of paramilitary groups operating in the country. President Nicolas Maduro here in Venezuela has announced a new set of economic measures intended to boost the Venezuelan economy. Now, President Maduro explained, and he could still be explaining, that the global price of oil has had a huge impact on the economy and that the government is now working on ending its dependency on oil. Maduro outlined several economic areas or motors that the government will work on to make the economy more dynamic. He regretted the attitude taken by the opposition against the economic decree, which has been enacted to confront the economic crisis.
Right now they are competing to see which is more radical, to see who takes Maduro down faster. They are having a knife fight amongst them. I had the slight hope, and I think that the country had it too, that the National Assembly would hear this message that millions have heard and responded to. Because here we are not asking for membership to anyone if they want to join the National Economic Council or to join one of the economic sectors, as I will explain later. Here we have made an open invitation to open minds.
The birth of a set of twins in Brazil is raising some serious questions about that supposed link between the Zika virus and microcephaly. Now, one of the babies was born with no health problems, and the other was born with the condition microcephaly, a condition which causes brain damage. Scientists are still debating over the elements that cause pregnant women infected with the Zika virus to have babies born with that condition. Pope Francis is heading to the northern Mexican border where he will deliver his last Mass there in Mexico. Now, the Pope made a brief stop in Mexico City where he was greeted by a mariachi band, and he's now headed for the border. Analysts believe that the Pope will address the issue of migration, which he has referred to in other speeches and statements in the past. The visit by Pope Francis to Mexico's south is also drawing a lot of attention on the rights of indigenous peoples and respect for the environment. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn now filed this report.
In front of thousands of mostly indigenous people in the southwestern state of Chiapas, Pope Francis made what some are considering to be his most important declarations in his 5-day trip in Mexico.
On many occasions, in a systematic and organized way, your peoples have been misunderstood and excluded from society. Some have considered your values, culture, and traditions to be inferior. Others, intoxicated by power, money, and market trends, have stolen your lands or contaminated them.
The formal expression of forgiveness by the Catholic Church to indigenous peoples was accompanied by a decree to allow Mass to be carried out in indigenous languages. The intercultural discourse also touched on a theme central to indigenous identity.
Among the most abandoned and harshly treated poor is our oppressed and devastated land. We can no longer be deaf to one of the biggest environmental crises in history.
While the general criticisms of market capitalism, accumulation of power, and the exploitation of basic natural resources made by Pope Francis are not being taken lightly, one indigenous rights analyst questions as to if these declarations will produce an impact in public policies.
I think that what the Pope is saying has had a strong impact in the media, and it will have a strong impact among indigenous communities. But I think from the standpoint of the state, there will be, unfortunately, no change. We have a political class with a very strong Western idea of culture.
For decades, the state of Chiapas has been a symbol of indigenous struggle and rights to land, territory, and identity. Whether public policy favors or not, indigenous people affirm they will resist and continue their strategies to gain greater autonomy. Clayton Khan, teleSur's, Mexico City.
Health workers in Peru have launched a 24-hour strike to demand better working conditions. Now, despite staging a strike last year, which ended with an agreement with the government, the health workers union says that the government is not honoring the deal. In fact, the government has taken measures to cut spending in health. With almost 3 months in power, the new Argentine government, led by Mauricio Macri, has significantly hurt the pocket of many Argentinians. With an explanation now, our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Laureano Ponce, explains.
The economic measures implemented by Mauricio Macri's government has sparked inflation in the last 2 months. Despite government officials argue it is a consequence of the policies carried on during the Kirchner's era, people do not seem happy with the rise in the prices of basic goods. The government has also announced electricity and gas bills will be more expensive from next month on.
They are definitely harming the working class. The income of the working classes are being transferred to the corporate sector. They are looking to create a recession and to cool down the economy by reducing consumption levels.
Despite the government claims to be waging war against inflation, the results do not seem visible so far, and the consumer protection organizations demand stronger regulations on supermarket chains and public services.
What consumers should do is to demand their representatives, senators, the president, and the vice president, who are elected by their vote, to comply and make others comply with the law. By doing only that, we would significantly change the situation of vulnerability in which most of the consumers are right now.
However, experts believe that the main problem lies in the excessive earning rate of the big businesses and that the policies that the government is carrying on are far from effective.
Not only has inflation spiked in the last months at a 6% per month, which is more than 70% annually, but we also see a very complex inflationary inertia in the future, which is going to harm the purchase power of the salaries.
The devaluation of the Argentine peso has made the minimum wage to go down from $600 last August to $432 in 2016, while the rise in the price of consumer goods has caused a 10% reduction in the purchase power of the salaries. Seems that while the workers' incomes are cut off, the wealthy are becoming even wealthiest in Argentina. Laureano Ponce, teleSur, Buenos Aires.
At least 28 people have died and at least 60 more were injured in Turkey's capital after a vehicle exploded there. Now, according to Ankara's governor's office, the explosives were detonated as military buses passed by the vehicle. Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu canceled a trip to Brussels to stay in Turkey and address the emergency. Humanitarian aid has started reaching besieged areas of Syria after trucks filled with supplies left Damascus earlier today. According to the United Nations, the Syrian government approved access to 7 areas after talks were held on Tuesday. Supplies included wheat and high-energy foods. However, areas being held by armed groups and terrorists are still under siege. UN Special Envoy Stefan de Mistura says he is working on gaining access to those areas. De Mistura praised the efforts and the people working on the first deployments.
I'm just waiting to say to our colleagues who are going and wishing them good luck and to do their job in helping the people of Syria in difficult places. Thank you.
The Israeli army has continued its destruction of agricultural land near a Palestinian town located in the northeast of Jerusalem. According to local reports, the demolitions are meant to prepare the area for a national park, which will be used by Israeli settlers. The Apple Corporation says it will oppose a federal judge's order to help the Justice Department unlock a phone used by a suspect in the San Bernardino attack. Now, the company posted a strongly worded letter to customers via its website and called the order a, quote, unprecedented step which threatens the security of our customers, end quote. However, the White House says that the access is only for this particular case and does not apply to all phones.
I think it is important to note here, Josh, exactly what the Department of Justice is requesting. They are not asking Apple to redesign its product or to create a new backdoor to one of their products. They're simply asking for something that would have an impact on this one device. You know, again, for the merits of that argument and why the Department of Justice has concluded that that's important,
Meanwhile, the United Nations mission chief in Mali paid tribute to 7 Guinean peacekeepers who were killed in a jihadist attack on their base last week. Now, it includes the first woman to die during employment. River Radames has claimed his 3rd gold medal at the Youth Olympics in Lillehammer, Norway. Now, Radames is only 18 years old and he hails from Colorado, which is said to be the skiing capital of the United States. The athlete could be heading for a 4th Youth Olympic gold medal, as well as competing in the men's slalom on Friday. And a new Colombian film focusing on the Amazon forest could win the Oscar for Best Foreign Film. Have you seen it? It's called The Embrace of the Serpent. It portrays the very unknown Colombian Amazon forest from the perspective of the indigenous people that live there in the forest. The filmmaker used the indigenous population as actors and actresses, and he also gave them a voice in their own language, which has gained director Ciro Guerra praise from his critics around the world. Been meaning to see that one. Hopefully I will be able to see it before the ceremony. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This has been From the South for teleSur English. I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you tomorrow.